Zangpo.
Kamrimo.
Jajolappa.
Chajalo.
Namaste.
Hello and welcome to the Sikkim podcast brought to you by Summit Times. I'm Chiring Eden.
I'm Pema Wangshuk.
And
Today is Tuesday, the 3rd of December 2019.
And we have very chilly weather
Oh yeah, the weather's really packed up.
since yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, yesterday was cold too and today too. But then we were supposed to give the listeners an update after the last podcast.
Yeah, you had promised.
Which was about the updates were about the swearing in of the chief minister. So we thought we'll do a proper podcast. So I give a just short update.
No, I think you were
Right.
just being lazy.
No, I disagree. Anyway, so the swearing in finally happened. So we had also reported in the Summit Times paper. We had got information from some official sources
Yes.
that the swearing in was being postponed due to the governor's ill health,
Yes.
and it was likely to take place by 2nd December,
Hmm.
and it took place on 30th November.
Yeah.
And so it's like Summit Times impact.
No, I won't call it impact. I mean, we broke the information.
We broke the news.
It's
but,
not as if we reported and then they had the swearing in done. Oops, we don't have a sworn-in chief minister. No, it was not like that.
Yeah, because if you remember in the last podcast also we discussed there was so much confusion regarding the swearing in, because the swearing in was announced for
Yeah.
27th, and then
No, 26th.
26th?
Yeah.
Yeah.
27th is the last day.
And then there was no news after that. We just heard unofficially that it had been postponed, and nobody knew exactly why.
Why it was being held in the first place,
That
and
also.
then why was it rescheduled? There was
Why was it rescheduled?
No,
And
we
even if
reported.
it was rescheduled, there was no information about.
Yeah, we were not told that it's not been that it's been rescheduled, right?
Yeah.
We received an invitation. All the media people received an
Yeah.
invitation,
the-
and then on their WhatsApp groups, I think it circulated that
Yeah.
there's no swearing in.
Mm.
Uh, very interestingly, none of them bothered to find out why it was not happening. They just didn't show up at Raj Bhavan for the swearing in, because officially there was no communication that the invitation stands rescinded or whatever. And I think in this whole thing, the problem was the lack of clarity.
Yeah.
There was absolutely no clarity. We've been saying that since day one, right? We just received an invitation with no one willing to come on record on why
The second swearing in.
he had to be sworn in. Mr. P.S. Tamang had to be sworn in
So
afresh.
let us just laid out.
Yes.
Mr. Tamang was sworn in the first time.
On 27th May, after SKM formed the government, won enough seats to form the government, but he was not an elected MLA at that time. And as per rules, a non-elected member and non-elected person can be made chief minister, provided within
gets-
6 months he gets elected to the assembly. Which, to give people some context, this is more recently, this has happened in the case of UP, where Yogi Adityanath, who was a member of parliament at that time, was made the chief minister. And towards the end of his 6 months, which is the kind of time you get to be a chief minister without being elected, he became a member of the Legislative Council in UP, not the Assembly.
So the UP has two houses,
Yeah.
and which is why they do not need to contest elections. General.
Yeah, it's like
elections.
the Legislative Council is like the Rajya Sabha. It's like almost a nominative. The elected members do it. It's a done deal. So it's not a campaign. People don't get to directly vote for their candidate. He chose that option. But that's not the point. I mean, we got in touch with some correspondents from UP and asked them whether Yogi Adityanath was sworn in a second time. And they said no, he was just sworn in whenever he was sworn in. And so there is still... that's what I'm saying, there's lack of clarity, right? The press release that we eventually received from the Raj Bhavan, there's nothing from the IPR or from the government or from the party.
The press release we received the day the swearing in took place, late at night around 11:30. I don't know.
Yes, which is
around that, yeah.
so. Just if you just look at the timeline, right? The swearing in was originally, the re-swearing in was originally slated for 26th May. The governor was indisposed, could not come
Not
up from
26th May, 26th November.
26th November, sorry. 26th November. He could not, the governor was indisposed. The oath of office has to be delivered by the governor, taken by the governor or whatever. And the governor could not make it for the 26th date. He was indisposed, undergoing treatment in Delhi. So that was rescheduled. 27th is when the 6 months run out. 27th November is when the 6 months run out. 28th and 29th was the assembly session. So obviously they could not go down to Delhi for the swearing in. And on 30th in the morning, the entire legislative unit of the SKM flew down to Delhi. And late in the evening, the press release just says late in the evening, it doesn't say when, at what time. So they arrived in Delhi, and I guess the first order of business after they managed Delhi's traffic jams and everything and reached Sikkim House, the chief minister was sworn in. Interestingly, that press release arrived so late at night that none of the newspapers the next morning carried the news that he had been sworn in. It was on social media in the morning though. And the next day, which was a Sunday, we received a press release saying that the cabinet had also been sworn in on Sunday, a day later. The cabinet was sworn in. Interestingly, and all of this is coming from the Raj Bhavan, right? There is no press release from the SKM congratulating Mr. Tamang on having become the CM again, or the cabinet for having become ministers again. No information from them, and nothing from IPR. It's all coming from Raj Bhavan. And the second press release, which talked about the swearing in of the ministers, included a corrigendum. Because like is the official obsession with VIPs in attendance, when the CM was being sworn in, the press release mentioned that all the ministers and MLAs and senior officials of the CMO were present for the swearing in ceremony. The corrigendum that came the next day said that instead of ministers, please read MLAs. Because technically, at that particular moment, because the chief minister had just been sworn in, he had not technically picked his cabinet yet. So they could not have been, they couldn't, so there were no ministers when Mr. Gole was sworn in. So that is what the Raj Bhavan is trying to clarify. They became ministers only the next day. Which doesn't mean that then we didn't have ministers, but the point, the interesting point, and it's just something as simple as officials just giving us a timeline, right? This is just an academic exercise now because he's technically really sworn in now. But no one has told us that if Mr. Tamang was sworn in a second time, means there has to be a period of time. It could be 15 minutes, it could be a few days, it could be a week, I don't know, right? But there was a period of time when he had stepped down from the post of the chief minister to be sworn in again. No one is telling us when. Right? The press release from Raj Bhavan mentions that when the legislative unit of the SKM reached Sikkim House and met the governor, the MLA submitted a letter to the governor saying, we repose our faith in Mr. Tamang as the leader and he may be made the chief minister, right? Which means at least at the time of submitting that letter, Sikkim did not have a CM, right? Because he was being sworn in later in the evening. It's something just as simple as why can't we be told?
Yeah.
Like why are people embarrassed about sharing this information? Apart from the fact that why was a re-swearing in required when that clearly is not how things have worked in other cases where people who are not MLAs were made CMs, right? So
Yogi Adityanath was not sworn in twice, and from what we know, little of what we know, we are not very sure whether it was required if you go by.
No, because you are sworn in already, right? As a
you're sworn
CM, and
in.
then you qualify to be the CM. That's what the rules apply.
So
And
there is still a cloud hanging over this second
No.
swearing in for us.
yeah, clarity. Yeah,
don't-
they could have just come on record on saying why. Because I think Jacob Kalling, who's the spokesperson of SKM, in an interview to, I think, Voice of Sikkim or one of the social platforms, did explain that they took the legal advice of the Advocate General and lawyers or whoever, and they were advised, and in consultation with Raj Bhavan, they were advised that he needs to be sworn in afresh. Now, we also spoke to some people. They said that yes, if the 6 month period lapses, then he has to be sworn in again, because you can remain CM only for 6 months if you're not elected. But to that, my point is that the swearing in, the second swearing in, was scheduled for a day before that 6 month expired. So this was already on the cards. It's not something that happened after the 6 months ended, right? So there would be this few days when Mr. Tamang was the caretaker CM or whatever, and people just need to be told when it was. I mean, you cannot just
not tell
ignore
things.
the requirement to tell people and then think that it does not hold any value. I'm just saying it's an academic exercise, but it's a small matter. All you need to do was get ahead of the. I mean, I've got a. I think one of the reasons why a second swearing in was required is to kind of make the question mark on the first swearing in redundant. Right? There are a lot of questions raised on whether Mr. Tamang should have been sworn in as a CM in May. Right, because at that time he was disqualified. He stood disqualified from contesting elections. So there was a question mark. It was challenged in the courts also, and I think it was settled out of court or whatever. That case is not getting anywhere. I think it's been withdrawn since then. But that does not take away the fact that this is a question that was raised about his being sworn in. So if you swear him, if you make him take oath of office afresh as an MLA, it makes the first swearing in redundant, right? Maybe that is why party people or whoever decides these things are not comfortable talking about it.
Yeah.
And I think that should not be the case, right? Because the facts are there. I mean, he was disqualified from contesting elections. The period of disqualification was reduced by the Election Commission of India. It's not that he contested elections illegally. I mean, Election Commission gave him permission to contest elections. Why do you want to just leave things open for so much speculation? Because you think it might embarrass you. I think it should be a requirement of democracy for you to come clean on these things.
Yeah, this it did lead to a lot of speculation on social media. No, we were already having
all the speculation in social media was about whether there was a political tsunami coming, whether BJP was going to become part of the government.
That is because of all this.
They were not coming on record or clarifying things.
Lack of clarity, because even when they went for that swearing in, the entire cabinet and the minister. Why couldn't they have told even the media a day before tomorrow we are off for the swearing in and hoga and
yes,
like it's not
I
like
might have a correspondent in Delhi who I would have deputed to cover the event.
Why
we would have kept space in the paper if we knew that the swearing in is happening the same evening.
Exactly.
They just hoped that it would just nobody would notice.
That immediately raises suspicions. No, when you behave like this, it's like normal life. Maybe if somebody's being very secretive, you have suspicions, right?
Yeah.
So similarly, I just don't understand. Even the previous the swearing in being cancelled or not cancelled, being postponed, why it wasn't why a press release wasn't issued.
We had to make calls to 10 different people find out, and they spoke only off the record. And the moment for something as simple as verifying a fact, right? I'm not asking people to leak state secrets.
I know.
I'm just asking them to come on record for an official process. God bless you. For an official process, and they say that I'm off the record. You immediately wonder why are they so worried about being quoted on this, right?
Because we're still scratching our heads, right? We are still
for instance,
like, we don't know why it was.
After all that speculation broke out. Oh yeah, that reminds me. After all this speculation broke out on social media. The SKM spokesperson was on record again saying that this speculation is all bakwas. They've gone there for important official work. And sure enough, maybe over these days they'll go and submit memorandums or whatever. The Chief Minister is not even in Delhi anymore. Then comes, he didn't even at that time mention that swearing in, I think that's an important social official work.
Like swearing in, it's not like some small official function that you're going that you do not have to announce, right? Swearing in is a big news. It's a big news item also, and it's a big moment. So why couldn't they have informed people beforehand instead of countering speculations later on?
Yes, because
right?
the speculations still continue, right? I mean, people don't read newspapers. and nobody reads Facebook beyond the first paragraph that shows on your feed, right? No
And
one
then
clicks
immediately-
more and read the entire thing.
Immediately वो एकदम
Delhi,
aggressive हो जाते
why
हैं
in
फिर।
Delhi? People are about like, why in Delhi? That's easily answered because the governor is not well. He can't come up, and he's the only person who can
वही तो as simple.
get a
So
CM into office.
also the people.
You say that a day in advance, speculation gone.
Also, I'm thinking why people are like raising questions about things that people are also misguided or misled, and they start suspecting things that are not really. There's nothing really wrong or suspicious about it. Like the swearing in Delhi, I saw a lot of questions on social media also, where they are like, "Why is it happening in Delhi? Why isn't anyone telling us?" and all that. It's there, right? It's not such a big thing, but they should be asking why the second swearing in took place in the first place, why they are not being informed clearly by the government or the party. Even the party people that some of our reporters we asked them to ask, nobody knew, or they claimed not to know. How is that possible?
You're going for the
Right?
event.
How is that possible?
It's not possible. I think it's that it's
I
it's
hope
not
it's
unique
not-
to Sikkim.
I hope it's not that Sikkimese mentality. I hope it's not that. I hope there is more to it. No, Sikkimese mentality कि सब छुपाना है, नजर लग जाएगा.
Is that a Sikkimese
पता नहीं-
mentality?
Yeah, होता है तो वो कैंसर नहीं बोल
कसैलाई
सकते.
नभन्नु.
कैंसर नहीं बोल सकते. क्या बोलते हैं?
I mean, I don't think people will take very kindly to your comparing this with
No, really. कैंसर को क्या बोलते हैं?
CA.
CA. Cancer तो किसा deadly, like we can't
Oh,
say that CA boys.
that what cannot be
And then when
named.
they say CA also, they'll be like CA boys only, and they'll be
Okay.
like that.
Yeah.
And then they'll not, even the governors in ill health, I think that was the problem. They didn't want to say, I don't know why. I think they didn't want to
I
tell
think
people that he was
the
not
American
well.
system
Or he was not, he was actually well. And I don't know.
No, he
didn't want
wasn't bad, and he wasn't bad. No, our people, Indian culture, I mean, and same in Sikkim as well, we are very awkward about telling people that we are not well, right? Unless you work somewhere and you want to take a day off, right? Then you can be sick all the time. But I think the American culture of telling the people the health of your representatives, the physical health, actual medical checkup, I think that's something that we need to introduce here as well. I mean, like, and it's just about thinking that if I don't tell the people, they will not talk about it. I think that's wrong. They saw the kind of speculations that happened, right? I don't think the whole the speculations I think were wrong. There was no political. I don't think there was ever a political tsunami thing happening. My problem with this whole episode is the lack of clarity. Why could they not just inform people properly? And that led to speculation. I mean, people can speculate whatever they want, but
No, I just don't understand.
no, there's like things like, for instance, procedural things. The cabinet was sworn in, right, on Sunday. Maybe that official document exists somewhere, but I have not seen it yet. Which means we're just taking for granted that they continue in the same portfolios that they got in May, right?
We don't know.
They were sworn in afresh, which means for a time being, they were just MLAs and have become ministers again. Normally, a notification is issued which announces which portfolios each minister holds. That also no one is issued. And like no one seems to want to know. And these are just things that you need to come on record about. I mean, this is not earth-shattering stuff, but it's just about respecting the people. That you don't just pull these first time ever in Sikkim moments and then not bother to tell them.
No, and why couldn't they have taken one or two media people with them? That is another thing, right?
Yes.
That is done in other states. And
Oh, you at least tell them. I
Yeah.
could buy my own ticket and go for the swearing
Yeah.
in and report independently also. No one even bothered to tell us. I mean,
Yeah,
no one
I
even
mean-
said that the entire legislative unit of SKM is in Delhi. It came through photographs of
like
us.
forget they have their own Hamro Varta or whatever, right? The SKM has its own.
They probably
mouthpiece
reported.
also.
I don't know. Did we?
I don't
See it? No.
think so.
Okay.
Otherwise,
No,
it would
it's
have been
just-
out. Anyway,
Itne chote, like for such simple procedural matters, if people
No,
can
and
be
then there
worried
was-
about not sharing information.
and
I
the
think.
spokesperson Jacob Khalling had written this counter to speculations on social media, and then he had brought up the previous government and हम तो वैसे दिल्ली घूमने नहीं जाते जैसे पहले वाला government जाता था, and I thought that was completely unnecessary. You are
just take pot shots. You just kind of give them something else to
yeah.
talk about distraction, essentially. Because he just said official work. He didn't. If you had time to write me a
How can you call
500
swearing
word,
in an official work?
official work? No, swearing in is official work. It is like you're forming the government. Do you realize that for whatever period, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, whatever, for that period, Sikkim did not have a chief minister or ministers. So you were giving Sikkim ministers and chief ministers. It's official work. Of course, that official work does not require you to go to Delhi. So there is a lot of things that needed to be clarified.
No, I'm
right?
trying to be sarcastic. You got it.
Of
right?
course, I know. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, both of us were trying, like, our own ways of seeing how far we can push this argument
Yeah.
without getting lynched.
So.
So that happened.
Yeah. Is there
That
anything
happened.
else? You
I don't know. I don't know whether. Yeah, one thing more that I would like to say is, in the absence of any official communication yet, we know who the ministers are. But even IPR cannot just claim that this person is such and such department's minister, because I have not seen the official document authenticating it.
Yeah. IPR, they should have taken someone from IPR.
Which would have been kind of pointless, because what will they file? But yeah, still, they should have taken an official
Yeah.
murderer of press.
Yeah, why
releases.
couldn't they have live telecast it on social media?
I know.
That is
Even
also,
that didn't happen.
Anyway. The other news is that 29 public prosecutors have been, their services have been discontinued. We just
This
saw
happened, what, yesterday? Or day before?
2nd December,
Yeah,
yesterday.
Yeah.
The notification, the order or office order or whatever dismissing them was dated 2nd December, and they've been given 1 month's time.
That's the normal notice, I
normal
think,
notice,
officially
yeah.
required.
So a lot of these public prosecutors they are like not regular government employees. They are
Probably on contract.
contract basis, and some of them we've come to know, some of them have sat for interviews and got the job. Some of them have not.
Just been
appointed. But what a senior advocate that we spoke to has said that what is unfortunate, not nice, is that some of them have some of the public prosecutors have been working since Mr. Bhandari's time.
Yeah, for the past 30 years.
For the past 30 years, and they have now been fired and unceremoniously dismissed were his words, the senior advocate we spoke to. So that is not very nice. He was saying from Bhandari's time, and even Chamling
didn't remove them.
Didn't remove them. They were fine, and now suddenly they are like.
Yeah.
So that, but that is, I guess, just a part of politics.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, right, for something as major as the swearing in, if they didn't bother to explain things, we cannot really expect any explanations for situations like this either. This is, of course, the government is within its powers to do something like this. At any other time, we would have argued that the government should be kind of quicker in removing people and hiring people or whatever. But we know that merit is not something that any government respects. But something like this should be explained, right? And the worry for Sikkim right now is that they will not explain, and there'll be absolutely no one asking the questions either, because the opposition doesn't seem to exist either in Sikkim, right? In this complete I think the previous 2 terms, everyone talks about how powerful SDF was and how it had complete domination in the assembly or whatever. I think SKM was a very strong opposition. They raised a stink about everything.
Yeah, that's right.
What we've seen in the previous 6 months is that SDF does not seem to be interested.
No,
Some days they did make noise when people pushed them.
Just now I'm just realizing that there has been no news from Hamlo Sikkim or even SPCC, or like there is absolutely...
We've forgotten the names also. I mean, who calls Congress SPCC?
Sikkim Pradesh Congress Committee.
Yeah.
So there is nothing.
Yeah.
Complete silence.
Yeah, they just waiting for the next election cycle to come around, I think. But that is a worry. I think people should not turn around. If this is how the opposition parties behave, right, then after 2 or 3 years, they would have lost all moral authority to complain that SKM has become too dictatorial.
Yeah.
Because you
That's
are
what
just,
happened with the previous government.
yeah, you just you're not raising valid points. Forget valid points. You're not raising points.
Yeah.
You're not questioning the government on anything,
Mm.
right? What is the first thing that SDF did? It boycotted the assembly.
Mm.
And then, of course, they all became BJP, most of them. So, yeah, I think if anyone wants a political career in Sikkim, now would be a time for them to prove their chops as an opposition unit,
And I
right?
think they'll have a lot of material to work on, yeah?
There always is. I mean, governments mess up, right?
Yeah.
Like, you forget about who politicians are in office. Babus to wahi hai na. You cannot. They will not be able to do things too well for too long. They will mess up, and someone should be there to question them, right?
We
I
are
mean,
already-
media is there, but like then.
Yeah, it's non-existent actually. But
No, but politicians have taken that. They've occupied that space in the public domain, where it's their job and responsibility to
be answerable.
not
Okay.
answerable, to demand accountability, and yeah, they should make a noise about
No, I was saying like now you've made me forget what I was
Lost you.
about to say.
That's probably what is going through most of the opposition parties' minds. They
Oh,
decide-
I was going to say, now I remember, I was
Yeah.
going to say, you already hear a lot of SKM workers, supporters, let's say, unhappy with, I have heard a couple of, like, this is like gossip time. No?
Yeah.
So we've heard like,
Yeah. Closet and hardcore, openly SKM
Yeah.
supporters.
they are like, you've already, I guess that happens with every government, right? Every party, like you'll have, they can't, obviously the leaders can't please every supporter.
Yeah, yeah.
So that kind of thing is already happening. SKM, a supporter that I recently met was saying, when I had supported, now I'm like kind of regretting because I lost a contract, like
Yeah.
that was in
the bag,
in the
almost.
bag, almost like in the bag only, and then the party said, "Nahi, please, like whatever, you
Yeah.
give it to someone else." So that kind of, yeah.
You know, for SKM, it's going to get more confusing because it was very easy if they had just shut the door on SDF supporters. Then they could go after them and
Yeah.
cancel their contracts, can throw them out of jobs. But now, like, they're welcoming the entire SDF
Yeah, that's what we
cadre
heard
into their,
recently,
like,
yeah.
so all the panchayats, and you take the panchayats into SKM, right? SDF panchayats, the moment they join SDF, the SKM supporter gets alienated because
That's
that
what,
is
yeah.
the panchayat who was going after these SKM supporters for the past 4 years, right? And suddenly he's now your leader in the SKM as well. So what has changed? You have taken most of the leaders in, so your foot soldiers will not. I mean, this is something that SKM needs to consider seriously. That they could end up alienating their grassroots support by just allowing the entire SDF leadership to come in.
Yeah, continue.
Yeah, so that's something that they need to keep an eye out for, and it is going to, because then the same thing will happen with contracts as well, right? You take away their, because right, it, like you said, it's not easy to keep all your supporters happy by giving out rewards or whatever. Yes, that is true, but it is easy to keep all the people happy, no? By doing actual work and showing them that, see, this is the kind of government you deserve, and this is what I'm going to deliver. We don't see that excitement either. So, and I think we've said more than we
Should
normally
have.
do or should have. Yes.
All right, so that is it for this podcast, this episode. Thank you very much for listening.
And thanks a lot for
And,
being around.
Yeah, and if you could like and share the podcast and rate it on whatever podcast platform you're listening to, like iTunes, like Apple Podcasts, and like I think
Not just, you don't say rate it highly.
rate it highly, of course,
Yeah.
nothing less than 4 stars, okay?
Out of?
So out of 5.
Oh, okay.
So then we get hopefully more listeners.
Can reach us.